I'm Nikki Jovicic from Lookupstrata, and I'm also the Managing Director of Tower Body Corporate. I'm your host, and today we're joined by Tim.Kurniadi and Ashley Penny from Paynter Dixon and Keiran Brooks from Weber Architects to explore the advantages of remedial works. So remedial works can be an opportunity to not just fix problems, but also increase the value of your property. The Hyde Park Plaza rooftop project serves as a great example. By expanding beyond essential repairs, the project incorporated additional amenities and implemented energy-saving features, and this resulted in a subsequent increase in the property's market value and enhanced resident enjoyment. This webinar will open your eyes to identifying upgrade opportunities and show how to navigate the process of implementing them. So before we begin, I'd like to mention that the information in this session, as always, including the discussions arising from submitted questions and chat conversations, is not advice and should not be relied upon as advice, and you should seek independent advice before acting on the information contained in this session. And we welcome panellists today. We've got Tim.Kurniadi, who is the General Manager of Paynter Dixon. He has oversight of the remedial and insurance divisions. With over 15 years experience in construction, Tim is widely considered an authority on building repairs in the strata environment. And having previously established Paynter Dixon's remedial division as a Tier 1 service provider, Tim is focused on sustainable business growth for both divisions. His technical and regulatory knowledge is harnessed for quality-led construction solutions that maximise the return on investment for clients while ensuring compliance. And Tim is passionate about collaboration with the client and delivery teams for better outcomes. Ashley Penny is also with us today from Paynter Dixon. He's the communications manager and he's a colleague of Tim's. And Keiran Brooks is a director and registered architect at Weber Architects, a well-established medium-sized architecture, urban design and interior design practice with offices in Sydney and Newcastle. He draws on a wealth of experience in commercial and residential architecture, interior design, master planning and remedial works for small and large-scale projects. And unfortunately, Colin Campbell, who is the chair of the committee at Hyde Park Plaza, was unable to join us today, but we do acknowledge that he was a pivotal part of the project and Colin really had a lot to do with it. So it's unfortunate that he couldn't be here today. But thanks everyone for joining us and welcome to the session.
Thanks, Nikki, for that introduction. First of all, I just would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting here today in Rhodes, in Sydney, and that is the Wongal clan of the Eora Nation. And we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Colin Campbell, I know, would love to be here today, a key driver of the project works, which Tim and Keiran are going to talk about. A quick overview. Yes, we're going to do a little bit of a project background, understand the context of where the Strata Committee is based, and that's a really, really important part of understanding the background of the works. We'll talk about the design and the design innovation, and Keiran will go through that, really a fundamental aspect of the whole work here at Hyde Park Plaza. Then Tim will go into some of the construction challenges, and there were more than one, but look, some really fascinating aspects to how that remedial construction and was undertaken there. And then we'll have some really good discussion on what the outcome was. As it says on the name of the can of this webinar, it really is about how it increased the market value of the building for that strata community. So that's the fundamental, I guess, objective of it. And then we'll also talk about the collaboration and success, how important that collaboration was with key stakeholders to ensure that the outcome was what it should be. Keiran, I might cross over to you to give some of that background context on Hyde Park Plaza.
Yes, thanks, Ashley. Good morning, everyone. Yes, so as Ashley said, the location, I suppose, is fairly important on this project, and it was one of the drivers for why we're doing what we did. And it's at the corner of it's kind of Oxford and College and Liverpool streets, and has an amazing view over Hyde Park in the city, and also out to the east, Rushcutters Bay and things. And I think that context and a lot of other things was one of the key drivers to make sure that this project took advantage of those aspects of the building. And it really began many, many years ago, and we'll probably get into the time factor into this as well, with a real remedial issue around waterproofing and a spa that was aging and had constant issues, a pool that also had plenty of issues, just with waterproofing, but also some tiling issues that were just ongoing. And a gym space that really wasn't up to the standards of the amenity of the building currently, and also the future amenity of what they want it to be. So all those things combined over plenty of years, I suppose, brought to the attention of a remedial engineer some general fixes that needed to be undertaken to fix this issue long term. But early on in the process, they realised that while fixing it was one item, the scope of the work meant that there was a real opportunity to improve the space, make it more usable, make it more inviting, and therefore improve the value of the building and everybody's property. And so that was the initial driver, and that's how we, Weber Architects, got involved. It was I would say, very intelligent engineer that said, hey, we need help with that side of things. And I think that's really key to make sure that the key players playing the right role got involved quite early on in the project. I say early on, and I'm saying 2017 early on. So this project has been many years in the making, and the remedial issues have been many years in the creating, I suppose. So there were some issues that got quick fixes over time, and it was time to do it right and do it once. So you can see there on the screen, it's the rooftop in 2017. You can see it's got the pool on a really good day there. The spa on the left, you can see is out of order, and had been out of order for a long time as well. And that was sort of a key opportunity to say, well, it's out of order, let's not put it back in order, let's fix it and fix it once. And that whole deck, the two levels, it's a split level of level 15 and level 16 of this building, had multiple issues with the waterproofing and around the concrete deck, which wasn't in one spot, was several areas around the rooftop, which again was a bit of a driver in what we did. So design innovation. So I suppose design innovation comes from many areas, but one of the key things in this project was the way that we made sure the design was followed through with the right people, the right steps, with the right type of communication, and making sure that, I suppose, the key players were involved and communicated the right thing to everybody involved from the body corporate point of view. So we were engaged by the body corporate for sort of full design services, and we say that because that was right back when we were scribbling on napkins, all the way to sort of handing over the keys or handing over the floatings to the pool, I suppose, right to the end. And we're still involved in the building, which has been really good. The remedial engineer did start the project with a report that said, these are your issues and this is how you need to fix them. I know probably plenty of people in this webinar have all seen those reports, maybe. Essentially, this is the advice, and we got the right advice from the right people early on. And then that started a process of, okay, well, how do we get this done? How do we sell this in? And how do we do it once and not do it sort of band-aid fix? And making sure that we take advantage of anything we can along the way. And that included, from an innovative side of things, that included not just how do we do great design, how do we produce a great aesthetic, how do we produce a great space, but how do we communicate that design? And I suppose Colin, who is the chairman of the body corporate, was a key driver in making sure that the right people in the right time and the right place in terms of presenting what we needed to present and selling that for. We started early on with concept sketches. It's really sort of getting some ideas on the page and making sure that everything that we did, all the ideas we had, all came back to the idea of fixing the remedial issue. The remedial issue is the driver, was the trigger. So from an architectural point of view, we wanted to say, look, this is a way to fix this issue, but get this outcome as well. Not, hey, this is a really great outcome, and by the way, it fixes this issue. Because for the strata, for the committee, and for the people who owned units, lived in the building, all they thought is that the rooftop has just been having issues for years and years and years, and that was what they wanted to fix. The idea of making a better space was something that came later. The first idea was, can we just have a space that we can use? So we were conscious of making sure that that was the key idea, because no one wanted to be scared into thinking that they were ripping off the rooftop and putting a new one on there, because that just sounds scary to anyone who has to pay levies. So, and that's what we did. So we focused on making sure that anything we were doing from an architectural and design side of things, referred back to the remedial issues with the building, which were plenty. So there was opportunity, I suppose, with the spa, the gym, the pool, the whole deck area. So created spaces that meant that when you get this back, when you get your rooftop back, it's going to be better than what it was, not just not leaking, which is a difficult thing to spend a lot of money on when you can't see the changes because they're all under the surface. And Tim will probably attest to that. It's quite a difficult dream to sell when you get the same thing back that you had before, except under the surface it's a bit better. Really, really important thing to do, but hard pill to swallow when you're spending that much money. And as I said, from being involved in the project all the way through was a real help from our point of view, Colin's point of view as well, from a strata chairperson. So he had a person who was in authority from a design point of view, carrying the ship with him, essentially being able to talk to individuals in the strata, the body corporate, actual owners, and then other engineers and other consultants that we needed, council, to go through council on this one, all the way to Tim and his team on site to give them the background, the context on why and how we're doing it, to keep that same party line of why we're doing this project, which is really important, that it was consistent. We stayed in the same track all the way through the many years that we needed to get this project done. And yeah, some images there. So again, some high level concepts on the left there that started the process of people going, oh, okay, we can get something that's better while fixing these issues, and imagery and things to also say, look, we're going to fix your rooftop and it's going to look great. And I think that was a real driver for people as well. Just the idea that they could get something, as I said, back that was better than they had before and stop the leaks.
So I guess our role was to take that vision in that green water into reality and clean water, which, you know, it was a challenge in itself, not just the green water, but taking something that I guess originally wasn't designed, or the intent wasn't there to create the vision Keiran and the executive committee had. The first challenge we kind of had was this spa. So obviously, as Keiran was discussing, it was kind of the bane and probably the catalyst for the remediation works. And what better than to alleviate having to repair concrete cancer or concrete spalling in the future than to change it to a stainless steel spa. Problem was, it was the first commercial spa that we're aware of to be completed in stainless steel in Australia. Look, lucky for us, they're actually doing a swimming pool out of stainless steel down at the Crown in Barangaroo, up here in New South Wales. But so just from a due diligence point of view, I guess, again, collaboration came into frame. So our construction manager and a member of the executive committee went down to Crown to review the works there and just make sure that obviously it was the right fit for Hyde Park Plaza. And that was a positive meeting, but it didn't end there. We had countless meetings with the guys in America because the manufacturer was an American manufacturer. Luckily, they worked on our time schedule rather than us working at 2 a.m. in the morning. So we had countless meetings and just about making sure that, I guess, not only the aesthetics was right, but function and form was correct as well. So it might sound silly, but we spent, half an hour to an hour talking about seat angles on the back of the seat to make sure that it is suitable for the type of environment that it'll be subject to. You got families that live here, but you've also got short-term stays here at Hyde Park as well. So yeah, there was a lot of kind of thought process in and around the spa in itself. It's almost a centerpiece, but I think with Keiran's design and Colin's vision, it's one of many centerpieces that's existing now.
The key thing we did put into this project to make sure we got a good result, so value for money, and also the quality that we feel is up there, was the time. We put time into it.
The next challenge was the location. Hyde Park Plaza, as Keiran alluded to, is in the middle of the CBD, or just off to the side of the CBD. It's on two main artery roads, being Oxford Street and College Street. and the boundaries were pretty much the walls of the building. So a lot of collaboration, not only with Colin and the executive committee in regards to making sure that we understand, I guess, what each stakeholder required, or their minimum, I guess, requirements, what was important to them, to make sure that we did do the project from a construction point of view with that in mind, and try to minimize, I guess, the disruptions. Because this building itself has, I guess, long-term stay or residential. It also has short-term stay, but it also has a college on the first floor as well, and a restaurant on the ground floor. So there were a lot of stakeholders and a lot of requirements from them. But again, collaboration at the start of the project to understand each and everyone's, I guess, important items to make sure that we worked around that, and I guess minimize disruption throughout that as well. The spa as well had to be lifted up. Not the easiest of tasks. One of the biggest cranes you can get without kind of going into a specialized, what they call a specialized crane that they use for bridges and whatnot. There was a lot of planning involved here as well. Sydney being I guess, I was going to call it an older city, but an established city, may we call it. There were old pits and old Sydney water tunnels that we didn't know about until we started scanning the roads and whatnot that we had to maneuver around. But yeah, as you can imagine, kind of closing off those, well, not closing off, but closing lanes off within those streets was a feat in itself. Making sure we coordinated with council and police as well on the day. So these had to be done on the weekend. Obviously, we couldn't close those streets during the week, but even on the weekend, it still gets quite busy in those areas. So again, you know, making sure that we're working in with the restaurant with their hours of operation, and the college's hours of operation as well was key in delivering this project. Here's a couple of glamour shots, I guess, of the spa getting dropped in. The pool in itself, again, you know, pools, they might seem great from a aesthetic point of view, but from a durability point of view, it's probably one of the most corrosive environments for concrete. For reinforcement within the concrete as well. So yeah, just a lot of work in and around that area. Design and durability, as Keiran kind of mentioned, the initial, I guess, catalyst for the job was a remediation project to fix the waterproofing issues they had on the job. I don't know if you mentioned, Keiran, but I think that pool was done not too long ago as well. It was actually re-waterproofed and retiled, or resurfaced not too long ago as well, before 2017. So making sure that, I guess, people generally focus on the aesthetic of a finished product, and I think we've seen that especially around New South Wales for kind of the last 5 to 10 years, and hence why they've got now a building commissioner, because everyone is focused on what it looked like at the end, not necessarily what was happening before they got to the end. So again, I think it was critical for the Owners Corporation to make sure that not only did it look good, but the durability, or the quality underneath the skin had attention paid towards it as well.
Yeah, I think the OC had many years experience with looking at something to fix what was happening and doing that fairly quickly and getting a result that was somewhat temporary. Fixing things, you make that decision on whether we need this done now because it's critical, or, you know, this is how much money we've got and let's just get it done. And then in a few years' time, you're sort of doing it again. So because there was that context and that history with some of the things that were fixed in the building, potentially there was a better appetite from the OC to say, okay, right, so it's going to take some time and it's going to cost a bit more money, but we're going to do it, and we're not going to have to do it again for another 25 years. Instead of, this will hopefully fix it, fingers crossed, and maybe we'll get a couple of years out of it before we have to do the proper job. Like, it was all about like the proper jobs. So this project was about, okay, let's get all these proper jobs, the real fix, the proper fix, and let's try and put those together in one package to get some efficiencies out of that, and sort of do this hopefully once. Yeah, and have it last, you know, that 25 to 30 to 40 to 50 year time. So.
100%, and all the materials and whatnot were chosen with that in mind. You can kind of see here, probably talking more of an engineering speak and whatnot, but the membrane used on this project was what we call a sheet membrane, which has a bit more longevity in it, rather than the liquid membranes that you generally see on a new build construction. This takes time, making sure that the quality is there beyond the aesthetic, because look, plenty of you would know from experience, once waterproofing has failed, or once those items that you can't see, passive fire and whatnot, has failed or hasn't been done compliant, you're taken away, or the aesthetics to get to it. And you know, it's going to take time, cost a lot of money to do it as well. So yeah, it was important, I guess, and it was clear through the OC, which was good, good fresh breath of air, that Colin and the rest of the executive committee and the owners corporation wanted a quality, durable product, and could understand the timing implications associated with that as well. So onto safety. This was an interesting one. This project was completed during COVID, which no one saw coming. That was through a lot of challenges for us. Obviously, again, you had the restaurants there, you had the short-term stay, you had the college, which were hurting in its own perspective as well, let alone having construction happening at the same time. So yeah, look, good collaboration again between all the stakeholders. Keiran, Colin, they were very understanding, I guess, of the situation. We had a lot of trades that came from the isolated areas that couldn't get out of those areas during the time. And I guess working together, we could communicate clear and hopefully effectively to the rest of the owners corporation, to let them know and understand, I guess, the challenges we were facing during that time, but also, I guess, give them the surety that we're completing the project, albeit slightly slower than what we anticipated during that time. The other importance about safety is, obviously, most of these projects in Strata are working in live environments. There's a lot of different, I guess, stakeholders within that as well. A lot of kids around, a lot of elderly around. So just making sure that it's clear and concise, that we are there to work, but at the same time, we're there to keep them safe during those works. So traffic management, pedestrian management, making sure that what we call it, we're only impeding lifts and all that during, I guess, non-peak hours. All that collaboration and pre-construction work was key to ensuring that the project was delivered successfully. Optimizing market value. I think this one's really important. I think, like Keiran was saying, a lot of remedial projects, we're giving owners what they either should have had in the first place, or refreshing it back to where it was 40, 50 years ago, end of life maintenance, essentially. A lot of opportunities can be had during that time. With this project in particular, obviously hiring an architect which can improve the aesthetics of the building, increase the market value significantly. And from a cost perspective, it may have been 10% cheaper, or 10 to 15% cheaper, if we didn't do the aesthetic upgrades, movement of the gym, and pretty much given the owners what they had, minus the green water and minus the tarp on the spa. But as you can see, well, hopefully in the photos to come, the upgrade just from that 10 to 15% is significant. On this project as well, we were looking at the cooling towers. The cooling towers had to be replaced. Again, Colin and the executive committee could have just replaced it like for like, but took the time to do a bit of research in around power efficiencies, and I guess upgrading cooling towers to make sure that the initial principal cost would return in energy efficiencies down the track. And again, a bit of research around that. We've also completed another project, which I can probably put a bit more value in terms of dollars to, a project down in Mossman. The owners corporation had to repair concrete cancer on that building. The remedial works would have cost them about 800 to 900 grand back in the day. They ended up spending 1.3 million to make their views. They had views to Taronga Zoo and the Harbour Bridge, so they were toughing it out but they opened up their views to remove a concrete upstand or to full height windows. And we actually had a real estate agent come in before and after the works, and it uplifted the values of their property around three to 350 grand, depending on which level they were on. So there's real data behind it, and it's just a good opportunity, like especially around tiling, you know, color schemes and whatnot. The cost is generally in the labor, not necessarily in the material. So, you know, you could change a $50 a square meter tile to a $60 a square meter tile, and you know, just significantly increase the aesthetics and the opportunity for market value in there as well.
So at the beginning of the project, cooling towers wasn't mentioned. In 2017, we didn't mention it. But as we worked through the design and as we went in and out of council and got approvals and sorted out further consultancy and got contractors on board, the time had changed, and now the cooling towers came up. Colin saw it as an opportunity to say, well, we're taking away this big wall that's in front of them. Why don't we change them now? They're 2 years from a 20-year lifetime. I think by the time we changed them with COVID, they probably were at end of life, so it all worked out. But it was about focusing on not just what can we do now, but what can we do? What are we going to need to do in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years time that we don't want to do again, or right now would be a good time. So there is a lot of questions about costs and things, but I suppose what Colin did early on as well, before he spoke to us, before he probably spoke to the remedial engineer, is he had a quantity surveyor looking at their sinking fund, their capital spend fund, and doing some really long-term plans, which I know you guys all do, but being fairly realistic about some numbers as best he could early on, then flagging that early on to the OC and to the rest of the committee, I suppose, and the owners. There was an anticipation that money would need to be spent, and I suppose as the project went on and the years went on, some of that money obviously came in because that was what was planned in the levies and that long-term things. So there's a lot of planning around costs. So final costs and all that sort of thing, it's probably not for us to say at this point, but it'd be more for Colin and things in terms of how much they spent. It's their money. But the planning around costs was key, and it was quite thorough. We kind of knew where we needed to land. We could design in and around that. We could talk to Paynter Dixon. We could talk to the engineers about how do we keep costs down here, but make sure we spend them there and that sort of thing, because there's a clear plan about what and when the money could and couldn't be spent. And the when was really important as well. As you guys know, money comes in with levies, so there's money potentially on its way, sort of thing. So he was planning that a lot, and that comes back to the market value thing. So what can we do to make sure that the market value for each individual and the building as a whole is taking every opportunity to do that, and that means spend money as well. So cost efficiencies. They did research into the cooling towers and the spa system and the filtration systems, because over 20 years' time they'll spend less money because they put more money at the beginning. The simple spend money now and not spend it later. There were some really inefficient systems that were in play up there, and Colin and the team said, this is the opportunity to make this better so our bills go down. But just try to put it all in sort of one go. So there's not much of this rooftop we didn't touch by the end of it. And I'm sure Tim will agree. There's not much of this rooftop, mate, that you didn't have to touch. It was a big project. So yeah, those new technologies that were going to save money, and obviously just getting the advice. Tim talked about choosing the right tile. I mean, it comes down to sometimes that simple, but choosing the right membrane, choosing the right tile, if we can call engineering and architecture that simple. But those little decisions that a body corporate can't make. One, you've got 16 opinions and 3 really strong ones. You need authorities without an agenda to make those decisions on your behalf, so you can keep things moving and those decisions can keep being made. And if you get a good team on board, then hopefully they're the right decisions that do end up with a great result. And I feel that's what we got here. But it was probably just that control over making sure that the decisions were being made by the right people, with the right experience and expertise to continue that idea of increasing the market value whenever we could, based on the big issues that we needed to fix because things were leaking and falling down. We wanted people to come up there afterwards, after all this time and the money, and say, oh, wow, this is different. Even if that's a psychological thing, I think that was really important. So not go bananas spending a lot of money on just trying to make it different, but just give the owners a different feel to that space, which I think we did.
Mm-hmm.
Creating spaces that they didn't have before. This idea that, hey, we've got a covered space, we've got an area up there. It's amazing rooftop. It's an amazing location. We didn't have to do much about that. Amazing views. We didn't have to do anything about that as well, but just create some spaces that people could spend time in, enjoy. And it works. It gets a lot more use, as you can imagine, from before. And yeah, a gym space that exists before, but pretty much it just existed before. It was a little dark room, almost like a little lean-to demountable up there. We incorporated the gym into the space, made it feel like it was part of the space. And Colin was a great leader. He still had to deal with lots of opinions, lots of people who thought and potentially did know a really great way of doing things. But it was about assembling a team that could say, this is our opinion, you're paying us for it. And if you don't take it, essentially it's you go nowhere because you'll never make a decision, and essentially you won't be utilising the money you're spending on whether it's a contractor, consultant, and that sort of leads us into this, I suppose. It was just that, that was the success of the project. The main thing is around communication and just making sure that things could continually move forward and getting the right people in the right place to do that, to make those sorts of decisions and have those ideas and provide those options. But obviously Colin was the driver of that because he kind of got us involved.
And that early involvement as well, Keiran and Tim?
The project did start with leaks, so therefore an engineer walked up there and went, yeah, you've got a problem. That was the first thing for sure. But very soon after that, quantity surveyors, us as the architect, got involved. There was just an appreciation that this project couldn't be done in parts. It needed to be done as a group, a collaborative group. Once we got out of council, pretty soon after that, we were talking to builders, and we spoke to Paynter Dixon, and Paynter Dixon also had some early contractor involvement. And that was needed because with all these spaces, with remedial works and just general renovation works, I suppose, the existing conditions and the existing context that you're working with is a real driver for design. So we try not to design based on our ideas of what might be there, and then we get up there and when they start digging holes, we go, oh, okay, we have to change it. So we did need a bit of further information that needed some destructive work done to investigate what the existing conditions are. So we could come up with waterproofing systems and design details that suited the existing conditions. And Tim and his team came out and did a bit of work there, gave us some advice, and that was really helpful as well. So those sorts of things take time. We could have said, don't worry about that. We'll just get this documentation up, we'll get the tender out, we'll get some prices back, we'll get a builder on board, and then we'll get up there and we'll start. But then we probably would have spent 3 months redesigning some things to make sure that we did it correctly. And those 3 months cost lots more at that stage. After you're up there with hoists and hoardings, etc. So yeah, it did. The time element was one of the successful parts of the project. The fact that we took the time to make sure we got the decisions right.
Yeah, 100%. I think involvement from us early on allowed us to understand, I guess, the intent of what we were trying to achieve on the rooftop, rather than, I guess, your typical design and then construct, where we get designs that are already complete and try to just build it. At least when we had early involvement in the project, we could talk to Keiran, we could talk to Colin, we could talk to the executive committee about what they were trying to achieve out of the rooftop, and be able to assist from that point of view. To
come out of a project this complicated and over this much time with this many players and still sort of have pretty good relationships with, and Tim, you can attest to this as well, like, the contractor, the consultant, and the client all really talking to each other was a testament to probably Colin's frame of mind in the whole project.
I can't really ignore this. We've been asked this so many times in chat, and the question is, how much did the actual project cost? And I know that's probably a hard question because there was so much involved in the process, and that you had the remedial works to do as well. But is it possible to give a ballpark figure?
The spa cost this much, the pool cost this much, but altogether it was an expensive project. But it was all, every dollar spent was probably watched as a, well, is this going to be a long-term profit, long-term value for this dollar that we spend? And that was the way the money was spent. So whether it was 1 million, 2 million, or 3 million, probably doesn't really the matter. The number probably doesn't matter. It was like all the money was spent based on a sort of a long-term profit, so to speak, whether it was amenity or value or other. But yeah, and all projects are so different, guys. So I suppose to say this one costs this, so therefore yours would cost the same, is just complete. It's just not a good guide.
And then obviously, Colin was such a pivotal part of the process, which we've spoken about on a few points. And it just seems to me like the communication was such a great part of it between you as a team, and also between him communicating back to the owners corporation and all of the residents, not only the costs but also the amount of time. And everyone's mentioned the time in there as well in the chat that it took, and the disruption that it would have caused within the building, which you've mentioned in the presentation as well. So yeah, very well done to all of you. Did you have the time frame that it actually took for the whole process? I think a few people have asked that in chat as well.
Yeah, so we got a construction certificate sort of mid 2020 for a rooftop project. Weather's not great. For drying waterproofing, wet weather's not great. So there's lots of variables there, and then our friend COVID. So Tim, when did it finish? 12 to 18 months ago.
We finished, I think it was early 2022 from memory. We had that 3 to 4 months of rain, and then we got hit by COVID restrictions straight after. So look, if we didn't have those sort of restrictions and I guess wet weather, it probably would have been anywhere between 6 to 8 month project.
What 3 practices were the most effective in transforming the committee from being argumentative, infighting and levies bound into a competent, cohesive, visionary force that completed these works? And how did you sell the vision to the owners and get them all on board? Which would have been a question for Colin had he been here, but maybe you two can share some insight into how he did that.
3 most important things, we've kind of said it 1,000 times, but the communication. So having someone who can control the communication and is a really good communicator. And probably Colin realized that he needed to make sure that it wasn't him making the decisions. So it couldn't seem like Colin was in a meeting saying, I think we need to do this and this and this. It always needed to be, this expert thinks we need to do this and this and this, or says we need to do this. So making sure that it didn't look like it was coming from some sort of agenda, or it wasn't anyone on the committee's idea, because there was plenty of ideas. Even if we were consistent with that idea, it always came from the architect thinks this, or the engineer did this. So having independent authorities, and don't rush it. I suppose that was, Colin wanted to make sure that the time that was needed for people to consume the information, make the decisions, or accept the decisions that were being made, was there as well. It wasn't a case of saying, let's quickly just do all this. When people feel rushed and not involved in the process, then it halts, it stops, kind of thing. So it's a balance, because you can't, some of these issues were ongoing and needed to be fixed, and there was mechanisms around and quick fixes in place that were sort of running out of time as well. So things had to move forward, but it was just making sure people felt like they were given enough time to consider what needed to be done and make those decisions. Selling the vision. As I said, we, as an architect, we presented this project from an architectural point of view, and that's why we got involved. We weren't there just to sort of hang on the side of the engineer and say, green tile. It wasn't that. It was about actually providing a vision and providing visuals to say, this is the dream. This is what we're going to do. We're going to fix all these things, and you won't see all those. Tim's going to work really, really hard on all that kind of stuff. But then in the end, you're going to get this result. So yeah, having the architects in the meetings, describing the project, delivering it, and describing what we're going to get out of it from that remedial and fixing point of view. And we didn't give them many options. So we've worked with a lot of strata committees, and we've worked with big ones and small ones and things. And I suppose when there's too many options and decisions to be made, then you might spend 2 years talking about whether it should be option 3C. We kind of said, look, this is what we think you should do. This is our best go at it.
Look, I've been in a number of, EGMs and AGMs when people are trying to make the decision to do the works and whatnot. But it really is kind of reiterating that leadership point of view, just making sure that it's thoroughly communicated through that leadership, and that I think Keiran's hits it on the head, kind of minimizing the options, because sometimes there really is only one option. You're only searching for another option to appease certain owners, sort of thing. And although we're saying it does take time to get it to a point where it's buildable, and I guess all the design intent and whatnot's completed, at the same time you don't want to waste time because costs do increase as time goes by. We've seen probably a 30-40% increase since 2020 on just general building materials and labour costs and whatnot.
Do you know how Colin communicated? Do they have a Facebook group, or do they mainly communicate through meetings or email, or you weren't really privy to any of that?
Oh, I think it's pretty old school. I think back in the day it was meetings, like, face to face, get them in a room. The ones that, the meetings that I was involved in, it was get everyone in a room, face to face, shake hands, just make it quite human. So yeah, I'm sure that he had many ways to communicate, to be honest, because he was big on it. But the design, or sort of the AGMs and the meetings that we were involved in, where he needed me and our team to represent some ideas and things, it was always face to face. But when we could.
Tim, do you have anything that you'd like to finish with before we go?
Yeah, I think just on the theme of collaboration, I think collaboration between owners, corporations, consultants, and builders is key into delivering a successful project. And look out for opportunities. Sometimes remedial work has to happen. There's no two ways about it. You've got to repair your concrete cancer. You've got to repair waterproofing. Look for opportunities to be able to uplift your property.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And Keiran?
That's, I suppose, the topic of the webinar, isn't it? To look at those opportunities, and can we add value where there's works that we just absolutely need to do, because lots of buildings are in a similar state that Hyde Park Plaza is and was. So looking for those opportunities, but then understanding that there's certain parties that need to be involved to make sure that, one, projects move forward. So I know there's probably plenty of people here with projects that are stagnant, getting the right people involved to sort of push that forward. And just get in there early, because it just takes a lot of planning and a lot of forethought to make sure that by the end of it, you don't look back and go, oh, we could have and should have done that sort of thing. So I feel, again, if Colin was here today, he'd say, look, there's not many things he regrets about this, because we really did cover a lot of it through a lot of discussion and a lot of planning.
Excellent. And Ashley, did you have anything you'd like to finish off with as well?
Oh, look, nothing really to add, other than, yes, obviously the collaboration between Colin Weathers and Paynter Dixon, obviously a key feature, as Keiran and Tim have spoken to. So, and they're good mates. I mean, I've had the privilege of just hanging around them on a few occasions, and you can see that they actually really just get along really well. So just that personal sort of rapport, I think. It's not always an obvious thing, but when it's there, I think it does make a difference. So, yeah. But
it's great to look at the remedial works, because usually it's looked at as a terrible thing to have to deal with, but then you've put that positive spin on it and come up with a fantastic project that's been to the benefit of all. So it looks like a real win-win for everybody. So thank you very much. If you gained value from this video, please hit like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're looking for information about parking, strata insurance, defects and more, head over to lookupstrata.com.au or sign up to our free weekly newsletter via the link in the description box below.